To call up Jeff Levin from the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender Community Center, Stephen Burg from the Simon Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance, Jonathan Leng from the Empire State Pride Agenda, Brian Ellicott from Queer Empowerment Project, and Robin Mall from Fierce? I'm sorry. Robin Mon, come on up. And thank you again for waiting so long, everybody. We have another panel after this, right? Yeah, we still have another panel after this, so we want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to speak, and thank you, everybody, for staying. Yeah. And we just hope everybody will stick to the topic and get to the point. So let's begin right over here. Oh, let me start by swearing you in. I forgot about that. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Okay, very good. We do this for a reason, by the way, folks, because we don't want anybody coming in telling us stories, which has on occasion in the past happened. So, thank you.
My name is Jeff Levin, and I am the Family Services Program Coordinator at the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Community Center. I've worked with the LGBT community, parents, and families for 3 years, and have also come to share the experience of my colleagues who work in our youth program. We serve over 2,000 LGBT youth and families on an annual basis. While the New York City public school system has made strides, such as the Dignity for All Students Act and Respect for All, there remains little to no oversight of these requirements other than through hearings like this. We continue to see many students and families who face bullying, discrimination, harassment, and worse, based on actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or family makeup. In the Center's LGBT Parent Advisory to the Department of Education, parents raise concerns about the lack of inclusive forms, staff that is not culturally competent in working with LGBT families, and the lack of educational materials and books that are inclusive of LGBT families are shared. The Center, in partnership with the Ali Forney Center and the Heatrick Martin Institute, offers the Leadership, Education, Advancement, and Placement Program, otherwise known as LEAP, to youth 18 to 21. The LEAP program is designed to increase access to college and careers to homeless and runaway LGBT young people. While we wish that all young people could gain the skills needed for college and a career at their local public schools, we know all too well that many youth grow into adulthood underemployed due to diminished educational attainment resulting from violence and harassment in school and ongoing discrimination in the workspace. Positive impacts could be much greater with increased oversight. Who is accountable for ensuring staff and administrators are accessing necessary resources and mandated trainings? When bullying and harassment occurs, who is held accountable? A lack of universal forms with gender-neutral language and parentage status for registration, emergency, and medical contacts is a small way to ensure that LGBT families of all makeups are included and their experiences validated. We know that there have been successful book drives by the City Council to help get LGBT-affirming books onto shelves. Are the schools receiving the books? Are the school staff trained and experienced to utilize the books? We recommend that the City Council continue to implement the Respect for All program and the Dignity for All Students Act and actively seek out the successes and challenges of both. Centralized universal forms for registration, emergency, and medical contacts should be gender neutral, with options and fill-in spaces for families of all shapes and sizes to be included. We also recommend that the City Council support and mandate anti-bullying and harassment policies, ensure that school personnel are trained effectively, be committed to gay-straight alliances being active and supported, and reach out to the LGBT community to get assistance in ensuring that. LGBT-inclusive curricular resources are available to staff and youth. With the active participation of LGBT parents, youth, and staff, the City Council can positively affect school climate and ensure that New York City public schools are safe for all LGBT students, family, and staff.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, actually good evening, Chairman Dunn, Councilmember Chin. You're probably wondering why a mainstream Orthodox Jewish rabbi has made it his business today to appear before you to discuss the treatment of LGBTQ students, family, and staff in the New York City public school system. The answer is quite simple: because there is nothing more important than fighting bigotry and discrimination in all of its forms and facets. My name is Rabbi Stephen Burg, and I have the distinct privilege of serving as the Eastern Director of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and its educational arm, the Museum of Tolerance. The museum challenges visitors to confront bigotry and racism and to understand the Holocaust in both historic and contemporary contexts. Through interactive workshops, exhibits, and videos, individuals explore issues of prejudice, diversity, tolerance, and cooperation in the workplace, the classroom, and the community at large. When Simon Wiesenthal was first approached over 30 years ago to lend his name to the center, he insisted on a specific condition: that the center would not be a museum of artifacts and remembrance of those people who have been oppressed. Rather, it would serve as an activist institution committed to reminding future generations of the dangers of a society filled with hate. Not too long ago, I had the pleasure of giving a tour of the Museum of Tolerance to and speaking with a senior member of the NYPD. I asked him during our conversation what he believed to be the single largest issue facing our city today. He didn't answer terrorism, he didn't say addiction to drugs, he unequivocally and most insistently answered bullying. Most of us here were growing up, at least bullying ended with the ring of the school dismissal bell. That is certainly no longer the case. With the advent of cyberbullying, our children and their families have to endure bigoted attacks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In our New York Museum of Tolerance, where we serve over 15,000 school children annually, mostly from the New York City public school system, we have developed award-winning seminars for all ages, teaching not only that bullying is bad, but demonstrating the effects felt by its recipients. In our Point of View Diner seminar room, a room specifically designed to provide a comfortable, friendly setting to students, we have interactive multimedia demonstrations which are specifically geared to showing what goes on inside the heads of those that are bullied and how easily those in the LGBTQ community become their peers' most sought after and most harshly treated targets. Many members of the council have come through our center over the past several months, and we were happy to host a new council members event this past month to once again demonstrate that bullying in all its forms must be prevented to the best of our ability. Why is a mainstream Orthodox Jewish rabbi here today to talk about protecting the LGBTQ community in our public schools? Because when we look historically at the world's worst atrocities, it all begins by instilling or ignoring bigotry in the formative years of our children's lives. In one of our videos, we hear Joseph Stalin say that ideas are more powerful than guns. So if we don't allow our enemies to have guns, why should we allow them to have ideas? And we all know how welcoming a place it was to live in the 1930s era Soviet Union. However, ideas are the most powerful driving force of the human race, and the idea that bullying can persist, that hatred is okay, that bigotry of any kind is in the least bit acceptable, is an idea we have to actively counter in the next generation of New Yorkers while we still have their attention in school-age years. I'm here today because the Simon Wiesenthal Center wants to continue to be part of the solution to the bullying problem in our public schools, public and private. I'm here because once we allow the Pandora's box of hatred to intrude into our society, there's no telling where it will end. I'm here to lend our name support of today's proceedings and to let the New York City Council and the LGBTQ community know that they have an ally in the Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Lang. I'm the Director of Governmental Projects and Community Development at the Empire State Pride Agenda, which is New York State's LGBT civil rights and advocacy organization. I was asked to talk about the implementation of the Dignity for All Students Act and briefly talk about health disparities, which I'll do in a very short time because I'm heading to Penn Station to take my train back to Albany. So, the Dignity for All Students Act has been a labor of love for many of us for the past couple years. Originally passed into law and signed into law by Governor Patterson in September 2010, it wasn't fully enacted until recently, July of 2013. And the reason for that was because there were a lot of additional elements that were added to the law. So there's more than just lessons about civility, respect, tolerance in the Dignity for All Students Act. It's also a lot about cyberbullying, reporting requirements, teacher certifications, and all these things that are going to be able to make safe and inclusive school environments. What we've learned, though, is that the pace of the implementation of the Dignity for All Students Act has been uneven at best. And a large part of that is because of the guidance that the State Education Department has provided or not provided in many instances. We have consulted a large array of the best experts in the state to look at some of the best practices out there available and to compile those into a compendium of best practices. One, it's a little difficult to find that compendium of best practices, and two, the State Education Department doesn't aggressively push out that compendium of best practices as an avenue for folks to create these pathways to success. So what you see is schools who already get this, who already understand that student achievement is intrinsically connected to school environment, do this work already. So all they've had to do is amend their current programs and do the phenomenal work they're already doing. Other schools who have not recognized this as an important part of their criteria have adopted zero-tolerance policies, which we all recognize are often used against those they're supposed to protect. We know that LGBT students more often are in fights, more often are armed to protect themselves, and zero-tolerance policies will then be used against them to kick them out of school and to increase truancy rates. We also know, too, that the reliance on school security and metal detectors is definitely not an avenue that we would like to see in our school system. Last week I had the opportunity to meet with a large array of school students from across the state. They came to Albany on their day of vacation to meet with us and talk about the school safety issues. By and large, they said that there are far too many school security officials and not enough guidance counselors. I think that's a very powerful message that we're more concerned about having our schools resemble prisons than looking into promoting their future. I also want to say, too, that the over-reliance on metal detectors is a huge problem. If the only piece of technology that a young person has in contact with throughout their school day is a metal detector, what exactly are we telling to our young people? And so I want to say that the Dignity for All Students Act can be a lot better. There's definitely an avenue for success there. We have to put some teeth to this, some meat on the bones. And I want to briefly, I know my time is running out, talk about health disparities. I know that Councilman Torres had talked about the need to get information on health disparities and data. We actually do collect that information already in New York City. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey does collect information on sexual orientation. So in August of 2013, the Pride Agenda put together a report on LGBT health disparities in New York City. We are able to indicate very clearly information on lesbian, gay, bisexual students. We know that there are higher risks for school violence, higher risk for eating disorders, higher risk for sexual assault, higher risk for mental stress. All these things that we know need to be addressed in a more formative manner. We do not have any information on transgender New Yorkers. That is not an oversight. New York City currently does not collect information on gender identity and expression, and that absolutely needs to change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm going to go before that because he asked.
Go ahead, Brian.
Good afternoon, Councilmember, Chairperson, Chin, Menchaca, and Reynosa. You know me already. I'm Brian Ellicott, and I'm an open, bisexual, and transgender man, and I was born and raised in Staten Island. I went to Public School 42, the same school as Councilmember Ignizio, Public School I-75, and South Richmond High School, and I graduated and survived in June of 2008. I say survived because the person you meet today didn't get to exist by then. She wasn't allowed to. I was told I wasn't normal, that I couldn't be me, and that, or my favorite quote, "You're such a nice-looking girl, why would you want to do that?" I think things would have been really different had they had LGBT history, like they have women's history and African-American history. I was taught, you know, Rosa Parks, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, things like that. Had I learned about people like Harvey Milk, about ACT UP, about the 1980 Democratic National Convention where they took a platform about LGBT, my life would have been different. History and politics has always been my thing. I used to sit in class and argue all the time. Had I been learning these things, I wouldn't have felt like an alien inside my body, and I probably wouldn't have gotten as much trouble as I thought I could have. I wasn't the kind of person to throw my hands around and get into a fight, but I would get into an argument when I felt like I wasn't being heard or being understood. So I'm not here to talk about bullying, even though that's a really big problem. What I want is for people like me, bookworms and nerds, and I wear those titles proudly, that when I pick up a textbook someday, Jason Collins is going to be in that textbook. You all are going to be in that textbook. That's why I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And next?
You can do it. It's okay.